Good evening and welcome to episode number 15 of Reading Between the Lineups. I'm your host, DRC, and we have got a great show for you guys tonight. I see that Chuck is already doing his Santa Claus routine in the chat as well. We've got subscriptions now going out to Puppies, Pettit, Petit, I should say, Longhorn, T-Chuck, Riff Raff. Welcome to the clubhouse, guys. Good to have you. But yeah, we've got a great show for you guys tonight. Tonight, my guest is Maxfire. Great guy. Perfect league competitor. I don't know if you guys remember this, but when we had our league's first perfect league, Maxfire had two teams in it. He had a free-to-play team and a $100 team in there. He knows what he's doing. He's a budget player. I mean, I just mentioned it. Free-to-play, $100. He's been able to have those teams up and perfect. All three of his teams. We'll talk about that tonight. And we'll learn so much more about him. We'll learn about his gamer tendencies. Considers himself a gamer. He's got the gaming chair to prove it. We talk a bit about his upbringing, the sports he played when he was growing up. Definitely a fun chat. But first, we've got some other business to cover. First, we're giving away 30,000 perfect points tonight. So right after the interview, we will be having our usual drawing. 3 winners, 10,000 perfect points each. So don't miss that. And we get things started tonight. We kick off with a little hit and run. And for hit and run, we're revisiting the topic that we first broached last week when we brought the idea of a perfect team community choice award show to be something that helps bridge us on our Thursdays when we'll have nothing better to do when Chris has no content for us to analyze. And so we debuted the concept last week. We said, hey, what do you guys think? And the community said, hey, let's do it. This sounds fun. And so over the past week, I've been gathering suggestions and recommendations about the topics that we should formalize and to really get this process moving. And what I have for you guys tonight is a formalized list of awards that we will give away on the PT Community Choice Awards. Starting with Best Discord Shtick, Tournament Player of the Year, Story of the Year, Best Community Contribution, Best Jardine Moment. Could be anything. Any Jardine Moment of the Year, we're going to nominate them all. Figure out which one was the best. Most Helpful Player in PT, the Best Main League Player, the Most Lucky Pack Ripper. I'm not going to win that one, I can tell you that right now. The Auction House Savant of the Year. The International Player of the Year. Maybe Roscoe gets a nod for that. Best Team Name. And then Rookie of the Year. So what do we do from here? From here, we start nominating. And I've got a nice little chat command here where you can submit your nominations there. And if you think that these categories are lacking something important, or there's someone that should be recognized that doesn't fit all that well into one of these 12 buckets, I've got a catch-all at the end of that form. At the end of that form, there's just like a, hey, if you want to call someone out for a moment that they've had this year, for something that was significant, feel free to throw it in there, and maybe we'll segue between the awards with a little recognition for those that deserve it. Because I'm sure that I'm not all-inclusive of all the moments of this game cycle, of all the players. So I did my best. I've got 12 categories here. We'll have a lot of fun handing out fake hardware for these. And we'll have a good time recognizing others as well. So look in the chat. Click on the Google form there. Submit your nominees. And then once those nominees are finalized, there will be another form that comes out to vote for who you think should win. So what I'm looking to do is coalesce around 3 or 4 or 5 candidates for each of these awards, and then send out a broad survey to let people pick and choose from there. But either way, we'll have some fun with it. And when will this be going down? The date I'm targeting now is February 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern. So basically stealing Chris's time slot on a Thursday where Chris won't be going. And we'll do it on this channel. And I'm curious to see who's going to win. I know who I'm going to nominate for some of these awards, but this is going to be a democratic election here. We are going to let the community decide who wins each one of these. Does Canada count as international? I don't know. I mean, half the employees for this game and probably 30% of the players are Canadian, so we'll need to take that one to the community and decide. I think that it shouldn't. The spirit of best international player to me is really for the players that have to deal with a different circumstance than we do here, whether we're in the Eastern time zone or through the Pacific time zone, where more or less the perfect team schedule is within our waking hours. And maybe if you're on the West Coast, you could argue that 6 a.m. is a bit early to start Sims. And it is. I guess it would be 7 a.m. Yeah. So someone like, living in Great Britain or living in Australia or living somewhere in Europe, they're having to compete on the same playing field that we are, having all of the action happening during our waking hours, whereas they have to find some other way to do. So I'm here to unilaterally decide that International Player of the Year is for non-U.S., non-Canadian. It's for the Euros, guys, as Roscoe terms it in the chat. The Euros are the only thing that kept this game afloat. All right. So, fill out your nominations. I'll be curious to check those out at some point tonight, see what's flowing in there. I'm going to submit my own form and nominate my people and my moments of the year for consideration there. And let's have as much fun as we can with it. All right, so let's go right back. Mode here. And then let me load up the video, and then we will get started. Joining me tonight on Reading Between the Lineups is Maxfire 5. How are you doing tonight, Maxfire?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing very good. I thank you so much for joining me. You've been someone that I've definitely exchanged more than a handful of DMs with and shared a couple groups with over the course of the game cycle, but I can't say that I've ever pinned you down so much to really know all that much about you. So I'm excited to dig in a bit tonight, and maybe that's where we start. Why don't you tell us who is the person behind the screen name?
Maxfire 5. Let's see. My real name is Daniel. I'll start there. My background, I'm environmental geology, business management. So probably a weird combination. You don't hear a lot of geologists as far as that goes. I was a big into sports. I mean, growing up, I played a lot of sports. Played varsity for a lot of sports. Soccer, baseball, basketball, you name it. Just kind of grew up from that end.
What was your big sport?
My favorite sport was soccer, if I'm being honest. I love baseball. Actually, I threw 8th grade year going into that. I actually was supposed to have Tommy John surgery, and so I had to stop being a pitcher. Yeah. Little League baseball, that was kind of before they would do rules on innings, or at least here in the Midwest. And so I threw 65 innings as an 8th grader in a summer. I was throwing 4 innings a game right at the limit, and I was pitching every night. So that kind of put me to shortstop, and then I just played baseball from there on out. But soccer, basketball, that was the main things for me. Loved it, loved playing sports, loved going to sporting events, but I also played a lot of video games, and that's kind of how I ended up going into Out of the Park.
Yeah, so jumping backwards a step to the youth baseball, that's something that's very much near and dear to my heart. I played a ton of youth baseball and did most of it with arm pain. I was a pitcher, I was a shortstop as well, and both my elbow and shoulder were problematic at different times. Given that you mentioned Tommy John, I assume that it was your elbow that was bothering you. And was
Yep.
that something that you just ended up playing through? I'm imagining you
Yeah.
didn't go through with the surgery.
Oh no, no. I mean, and it was more. He had said you could do this. He goes, "You're an eighth grader. You're going into freshman year high school." He's like, "You just move out. You'll play through the pain." It was a partially torn UCL. Um, I really just never felt it. I mean, as far as that goes afterwards, if you're not throwing 4 or 5 innings a game, you're playing at shortstop or second base. It's a not an issue.
So did you wear like an apparatus on your arm to reduce the swelling and pain?
Yep, I had a sleeve that I had to wear from that end. I just wore it underneath what I wore normally. I was always a long sleeve guy.
Yeah, I had that same, probably a very similar device on my arm as I was always nursing frequent arm pain. I'm surprised that you were able to play shortstop through it. For me, it really, it's what pushed me over to second base, unfortunately, just because the pain and eventually the velocity would get
Yep.
zapped from my throws. I'm curious if that happened to you too.
Yeah, so that's why I meant the comment about second base. I said pitcher, shortstop, and then I was like, actually, that's whenever I made the transition to second base at that point. I probably played one more season at short, and then after that, I mean, you're moving out of freshman ball into JV stuff. You start competing against the juniors, seniors, in that level. You got to move over to second away from short. Ended up, like I said, playing through sophomore at that point, and then I just switched just to basketball and soccer.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you hear someone sob story of a DRC or a Maxfire, they blew their arm out, or else they'd be pitching in the All-Star game in the major leagues. It always comes down to them either arguing overuse or arguing improper use of breaking balls at an early age. Now, you've already mentioned overuse in terms of throwing 65 innings in your 8th grade season. Were you also spinning breaking balls at an early age?
Not really. I was one that really never threw hard or anything either, so I didn't have much to throw off speed. I mean, I'm a small guy, as you can probably tell from my frame here. Um, I I was just a fastball, like two seam, four seam, and a circle change whenever I was a pitcher. I think a lot of it was just honestly wear and tear, and we'd play summer ball, and then I played 1 or 2 seasons of winter ball stuff whenever we could, but no, I think it was just overuse, and I'm a small frame guy. I'm not exactly built, big stature guy. And actually, even in 8th grade year, at that point, I was still under 5 foot tall. Going into my freshman year, I grew 11 inches, going from essentially like February into starting as a freshman in high school. Got up to my 5'9", and I've held it 5'9" ever since.
Yeah, that's quite the growth spurt that you went through there. That's interesting, and that certainly could help your other hobby there, basketball.
It did. It helped from that end. Maybe at least a little more comparable to high schoolers at that point. I was kind of always an undersized guy, as you can imagine, being under 5 foot in 8th grade. But basketball helped out. Played point guard, shooting guard, somewhere in that realm, until everybody had moved up from the freshman team up to JV that was tall. Our team was really short. And so for the second half of the season, our coach put me as a 5-man. And I don't know if you've ever tried to play center at 5'9". It is not ideal, let me tell you.
That
You're boxing on
sounds
a guy
like
that
a
are
tall
over
order.
6 foot.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
So you get into basketball. You're playing it under 5 foot tall, and then you hit your growth spurt. Now, prior to the growth spurt, did you get a lot of Muggsy Bogues comps? A lot of Mookie Blaylock?
Yeah, Mookie. I was gonna say it was Mookie is who it was. But even at 5'9", I mean, I was still undersized, right? Like playing in what were we class? I'm trying to think. It's class 5 was the highest in Missouri. So we were playing, or is it 6A, 5A?
5A,
Anyways, we were
6A, 7A, 8A. Like who
Yeah.
knows how many A's they have now?
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, we were playing at the highest level, so we were going against guys that are, I mean, they have our high school had 1,800 people in it, so we were going against high schools that were the same size. Just, I mean, a lot of talent that were around. Circling back to baseball, I actually played against Bubba Starling in a tournament once. If you guys know the name Bubba Starling.
Oh yeah, Bubba Starling was a Kansas City Royals prospect, was he?
Yep. Yeah, and I'm from the Kansas City area, and so I'm a big Royals fan. He was a commit to University of Nebraska, I believe, and then was drafted. Was at the time the highest paid signing bonus for anybody. Never really panned out. He finally made it to the majors. What was it, a year or two ago? But I played against him in a tournament, just a regional tournament. So that's my claim to fame is I once played against someone who ended up being a pro.
There you go. I had a couple of those as well from my travel ball days. No major league all star that's going to pop off the page for you guys here, but someone who logged a pretty interesting career. So Kyle Davies, who is a name that you've probably heard of if you followed baseball the last 15 years. He was an innings eater. I think he
Yeah.
played for the Royals as well, and
Yep.
he was a true like number 4, number 5, someone who wasn't eating those innings all that well in terms of reducing or preventing run scoring, but was giving you 160, 180 innings in a given season. And he played. He had a nice major league career, and he was the dominant arm in my travel area growing up, and someone that was cool to watch his career. So he goes from being able to strike out 18 of us losers growing up to being in the major leagues and being more of a pitch to contact type guy. But it's always cool to see the people from your area go on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a cool story.
What area did you grow up in?
So I'm from Missouri, north of Kansas City area.
Royals fan?
Oh yeah, diehard Royals fan. I was number 5 all the way through. George Brett, man.
So when the face of the franchise, George Brett, hit, how'd you feel about it?
So actually, if we're circling back, I'm gonna go back one version before that. I actually had a theme team in PT20. That was a Royals theme team that later turned into a Missouri theme team just because there weren't enough good Royals. As far as that goes. But even now, like I used George Brett face of the franchise up until about a week ago when I finally got my hands on a 99 Boggs to go over to the 100 Boggs. So I was happy to see him produce. He one of the best VR hitters in PT.
Yeah, it's funny. He's got such a volatile set of outcomes. You can have an unbelievable Brett season. You can have a dumpster fire Brett season. And, I don't know that there's a ton of rhyme and reason. Have you put your finger on exactly why that profile juts out that way?
I mean, it's kind of what everybody talks about. It's kind of the power profile. Those power profiles, to me, if you have a lot of power, you're going to have volatility. Someone like a Roger Connor or even a Boggs or Tris, someone that's a little less power based. They're going to be more consistent performers. And Brett, as odd as it is, because in real life he was one of the most consistent performers that you'd have. In PT, it just didn't translate that way.
So you're a big Royals fan, also a big Chiefs fan?
Absolutely.
Oh, congratulations! You're basically NFL royalty right now, going to the Super Bowl every year. I mean, we're not that far from this being 3 straight years, right? Because 2 years ago they lost on a last possession game against the Patriots, where everything in the world had to go right on that final possession for the Patriots to win that game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something I thought I'd ever see. I lived through the Marty Schottenheimer years, the Dick Vermeil years, even to like Trent Green, Priest Holmes era. We had season tickets for a while, and we'd go to games. I think the years that we had season tickets, though, they were never above 500. And then the year that we dropped season tickets, they finally had that great season. What was it? They were like 13-3 at that point. So.
This will surprise you. I actually am a Kansas City Chiefs season ticket holder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have been for the past 11 years. I know so because I got my 10-year Kansas City Chiefs season ticket holder hat as part of my season ticket holder care package last year.
That's awesome.
This year, obviously, there were no tickets. There were no games to go to. But I'm a Bears fan. Always will be a Bears fan. But the Chiefs are absolutely my adopted team. And have been for the past now 11 years, and it's nice that they're good now. And now when I openly root for them as a runner-up team to my Bears, I get accused of being a front runner when I've been hanging around for a good decade plus now. I feel like I've earned my stripes.
Since those rough years, man. Yeah, absolutely. So I do have to point out, since you're a Bears fan, you're probably a little bit on the Trubisky Mahomes side there. That's a rough deal. I mean, because in one hand you're happy to see Mahomes with the Chiefs, but on the other hand, Bears being your main team, I'm sure you'd love to have Mahomes over there.
Yeah, so I am maybe the band leader of the Fire Ryan Pace movement in the Chicago area. Like I think that seeing the level of incompetence that he's brought to the general manager position and still retaining the job is something that is just it's ridiculous.
Mind-boggling.
Going into that draft, you had a chalk option, an extremely chalk option. There were
Yep.
three quarterbacks at the top. Those three quarterbacks were Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, and Mitch Trubisky. And if you wanted to get crazy, Deshaun Kaiser. And Deshaun Watson was the absolute chalkiest of all chalky choices there. He was someone who not only played in a huge program, not only experienced a ton of success at a very high level, but did so against the best in the game, playing in back-to-back national championships against Alabama and being great in both games. So if you want to go chalk, if you want to not make a claim, go Watson, and no one will ever judge you for it. Now, if you want to go away from the chalk play, why wouldn't you bet on the guy with the unbelievable arm talent who can throw from any base, who can throw on the move, who has mobility, who has the lineage where his dad was a professional baseball player, just everything going in his way and putting up just ridiculous numbers in college, whereas Trubisky was a one-year starter whose hallmark was really accuracy. So, I mean, we can go back and we can find people that were of the same opinion that Trubisky was the right play there, but hindsight has really not been friendly to that decision, I should say.
Yeah, that's rough. I'm trying to find. There's I don't know if it was a Skip Bayless take, which he's known for his hot takes.
Of course.
But there's a hot take on Mahomes, early on that he was not going to amount to anything, that Trubisky was the right play. But you go back and you look at him, and Mahomes posted, 5,000 yards in his last two seasons. Just incredible numbers.
Yeah, the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer ever, franchise history.
Yeah, well, I was meaning in the college level, he was 5,000. I think he's 46 and 5,000 if I'm looking at it here now. And Trubisky, it's, I guess, what could have been for the Bears, but I'm very thankful that he is with the Chiefs. And he had that 1 year to learn under Alex Smith, and that is a year that is massively, I think, underrated by outside people. I think everybody, they kind of look at Mahomes and they just see him come in and do what he does. But that year to learn from Alex Smith, just an incredible year for him.
And if you think about that learning environment, so he gets drafted high, he comes into a stable team. I mean, the Chiefs weren't expected to win the Super Bowl, but they also were not a dumpster fire team that was thinking about winning 3 games. And they have Alex Smith, about the most steady personality, steady hand, game manager type to learn from. And if you think about what Mahomes needed when he came into the league, it was just that sort of presence to add that type of element, add ball control, add rationalization to the chances that you're taking. And so that was perfect for him. And then you contextualize that with Andy Reid, who might just be the best coach of a generation in terms of being able to maximize offensive talent. So I think if the shoe's on the other foot, if Mahomes gets picked by the Bears and Trubisky ends up in Kansas City, Trubisky is better than he is today, and I think Mahomes is worse than he is today, although Mahomes is still probably the better player.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It would be interesting to see what a Trubisky or someone like that would do under Andy Reid as well. But like I said, I'm very thankful that he ended up with the Chiefs, man. It's great to see. This is, like you said, should have been 3 straight Super Bowl appearances. I'll take 2 straight though right now. I just hope we can get it done. Going against Brady, so that's going to be tough.
Yeah, as a fan, I mean, you're just in euphoria right now. You're living through a dynasty, and as long as Mahomes is healthy and playing for Kansas City, there's no reason your team can't win 12 games and then make noise in the playoffs. And that's just so much fun. I've never had that feeling with my football team. Now, I got to experience a dynasty, or at least a semblance of a dynasty, here in Chicago recently with the Chicago Blackhawks, which was a ton of fun. Now, hockey dynasties don't resemble football dynasties all that much, but still, like, having the feeling of when the calendar flips over and you're starting a new season, you know that you're in the inner circle. You're going to the postseason. You have the pedigree. You have the talent to be a team that has a realistic chance of taking down a Stanley Cup. Like, that was just an amazing and fun feeling. And you could argue that the Cubs were in that same
Yeah.
stretch as well. But I mean, the Blackhawks were really on top of the world, and that's where the Chiefs are today.
Yeah, the Chiefs, the one thing I think, kind of outside looking in, you get a lot of takes on them this year winning their games by 3 points, 5 points, 7 points, whatever it may be, some low scoring number. Honestly, if you watch them, they're just kind of going through the motions. They score whenever they need to. I mean, the amount of
Hmm.
2 minute drives or 1 30-minute drives that they do whenever they need them, they put it up whenever they need to. And they did that against the Bills. I think at one point they're up by 23. I think it was a 38-9. So like Bills, I think scored the first nine
Hmm.
points in the game, and then the next set essentially was 38-9 Chiefs. Like so, the Chiefs just put it to them whenever they needed it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of that cruise control until you get to the playoffs, like you said, where Blackhawks were. They did what they needed to do to get by, and then they'd take their run and go for it.
Do I dare ask if you're a St. Louis Blues fan, hockey guy?
I have never really gotten into hockey, man. I follow Blues a little bit just because I had some buddies in high school that actually played hockey.
Hmm.
Just like on, I don't want to call it rec teams, but essentially at the local facility there, the local rink. So I don't have really any strong feelings either way.
No
I think
worries.
the close.
That'll give us a good opportunity to get this train back on the track as we have people raising their hands up saying like, "What is this? What have I tuned into? We're talking about football. We're talking about Mitch Trubisky. I came here for perfect team talk, so maybe we'll give them some of their meat and potatoes here. So you mentioned that you got into video gaming. You've got a cool
Yep.
video game chair. You got a really sweet headset
Yeah.
there. So why don't you set the stage and tell us a little bit of the background of how you got into video gaming, maybe a little bit of the games that made you who you are, and color that up to your perfect team experience.
Games that made who me are or who I am. Jeez, if I could talk here. Um, if we go back, I think it was actually just on the quiz that you guys do between you and Kidneys. First console that I had was a Nintendo 64.
Nice.
So I started back then. GoldenEye, man. People over. That's where it started for shooters, right?
So Odd Job's a dirty play, right? Agree.
Yeah, yeah, it is absolutely. Um, no, so I started there, and a lot of it, honestly, growing up, I played sports games. That's what I like to play. I played sports, in real life, so I'd play sports games, and then probably would have been Xbox. I'm trying to think. It was probably Xbox 360s where I made the jump into like a shooter style setting, and we'd play, game battles and stuff like that, do some tournaments, things like that. Um, but then Halo is kind of what took off for me. Halo 3 maybe a little bit, but Halo Reach, I spent
Hmm.
an enormous amount of time on Halo Reach. That was right into college. And you're doing just classes, stuff like that. You had a lot of free time, so I played a lot of time onto the Halo side. And then I wanted to get back into some kind of simulation style games, and so I actually jumped to Football Manager, and then a pop up came up on Steam saying, "Hey, you've played Football Manager. I think it was 14 was the first one that I got into there, and it said you should check out of the Park Baseball 15."
Hmm.
And so I was like, you know what? I love baseball. I played it a lot growing up. I downloaded it, installed it, and I just pulled this up here. I played for a total of 99 minutes, and I put the game down. That was pre-licensing, and so they didn't have any players, they didn't have the right name, stuff like that. And then whenever they got, I think it was Out of the Park 17, they actually got the licensing. That was I think the first year. Someone else can quote me on this, and I'm probably wrong on it. But I came back in for Out of the Park Baseball 17. That's when they had the licensing for players, and at that
Hmm.
point, I put some more time into it, and then definitely into 18. Like I'm just flicking through here. 17 was 44 hours. 18 was 111. 19 was 150. 20 was 1,000 hours. And then 21, because of COVID, there was 1,700 hours. Now, obviously, that's just up. You're working from home. I had the
Hmm.
luxury with COVID. I worked from home, and so I probably did a lot of what I'm sure you did, and what a lot of people did. They would have it up in the background, and we're checking different things. Occasionally flipping the silver market early on.
Oh yeah, you're one of those. One of my
I didn't.
brothers in arms.
Yeah, I didn't do nearly as much. Actually, Jerry was the one who keyed me in on it at one point. And that was where I kind of got started on it. I think he made 30,000 in a weekend flipping silvers, and I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to do this. And so that was my first kind of foray into the auction house side. I was always kind of collections, and I just focused on positive value collections. That's what I did in PT20. I had spreadsheets. Like at one point, I had totaled it was like 3.5 million. positive value generated out of
Oh
collections
wow.
from that. So like that's how I made my money in PT20. I was same thing. I did $100 team there, and then I had 2 free to play teams. It was just a lot of fun.
So a couple questions for you here.
Yeah,
Going back to N64, did you play Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball?
I did not play King Griffey Jr. baseball. It was it All Star Baseball 2000? I think was the name of it. Um, it was, and it had I think Derek Jeter on the cover. Yeah, All Star Baseball 2000. That was the first baseball game that I got at that point.
Okay.
Um,
Griffey was the one that I obsessed over. I'm not sure
okay.
if that came before or after the one you're talking about. And then you mentioned game battles. So
Hmm.
I actually got into one game battles tournament. It was sponsored by Best Buy. And this was Call of Duty 2, which I think was a launch game of the
Hmm.
Xbox 360.
Yep.
And some of the most fun I've ever had in gaming, like being in a competitive um, tournament bracket, trying to
Yep.
work your way to the final, and of course you've got a story that goes along with where you get bounced. But we had won like 3 or 4 games on our way up that ladder, and in the fourth one we were playing. Did you play Call of Duty 2?
No, I didn't play Call of Duty 2, so I made the transition to Xbox 360 probably a little later.
Okay.
Um, at that point, like the first Call of Duty that I had was actually Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, like just the straight Call of Duty. And that's where I first got into it. I was terrible to start out, man. Like learning how to play, learning how to shoot, everything else like that. It was rough. I think I had a KD of like 1.2, 1.3. Like I was rough.
Yeah, I mean shooters
Um,
are unforgiving, especially
oh
when
yeah,
you're walking into a
brand new.
franchise like
Yep,
Call of Duty that has people that literally will buy the new copy every 6 months when the new game comes out. And so,
absolutely.
they're intimately familiar with the mechanics, with the latency, with everything you need to be aware of for how to be successful in that game.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean what do I say? The competitive aspect though of it is kind of what turned me on to it. Playing against other people and trying to better yourself. I'm a highly competitive person. I really hate to be last in anything that I do, or second even in anything that I do. I want to lead whatever it is that I'm doing. So that kind of turned me into it. And Call of Duties, Halo, Battlefield, whatever it was, you name it. If it was a shooter, even actually like Shadowrun. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Shadowrun. Things like that. I played just about any shooter that was out there and tried to play at a high level.
So, what is the game, and maybe it's Shadowrun, but what is the game that you went deepest on and then got closest to the top of the iceberg for that particular game, where you felt like
Hey,
you were in the conversation of the best in the world?
I don't know about best in the world. Halo Reach though. At one point, our doubles team was in the top 60 in the world. So we weren't best in the world by any means, but we were definitely up there. We played close to 1,000 games. I think it was like 984 games as a duos team, and I think we lost a total of 35, maybe 34, somewhere around there. So we just didn't lose.
Domination. Yeah.
Um, and that was at the peak too, where people were still doing lands or game parties, that type of stuff. Like we'd go over and we'd sit 12, 14 hours and slam Mountain Dews, man. It was great.
Love it. My drink of choice.
Yep,
I know that I'm at the age now to that I need to kick it, and
yep,
I definitely have stretches where I do kick it upwards
yep.
of 6 months at a time. But
It always comes back.
you stop in a gas station and you've got the 2 Mountain Dews for $3 promotions just staring you in the face, and you have a weak
Yep,
moment, and then you're back on the horse,
absolutely.
and then
Yeah,
you gotta
that's
kick it again later on down the road.
exactly. I mean, I think everybody's if you're a gamer, Mountain Dew is your fuel of choice, man. That's what everybody ran off of.
Yeah, I remember when we used to do our Halo 1 LAN parties. So this is
Oh God,
probably.
Halo One. So let's Combat Evolve. That's throwing it back.
Oh yeah, man. So at the time I was working at Chick-fil-A with all my buddies,
Hmm.
and so we would get off shift on Saturday night, 10 o'clock, and then we would run to the gas station to get Mountain Dew, and then we would run to the grocery store. Maybe it was all at the grocery store to get lunch meat, and then we would head over to my buddy's basement. He had a big basement all to himself, and then we
Yep.
would proceed to play 10, 12 straight hours of Halo 1, playing only one map, playing only one game type, capture the flag, and drinking Mountain Dew and eating lunch meat as we played these wildly long capture the flag games.
What map? Blood
Blood
Gulch?
Gulch. It's got to be Blood Gulch.
Yeah, Blood Gulch. Oh yeah,
Come on.
yeah. I figured but I had to ask.
Yeah, so now that the Master Chief Collection came out now, what, 10, 15 years later, if
Hmm.
and when we do jump in and play a little bit, it's always Capture the Flag and it's always on Blood Gulch. And we have some people that grew up in different circles that were a whole lot more diversifying in terms of how the game types they were playing and the maps they were playing. They're like, guys, do you guys ever get sick of Blood Gulch? Like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you guys play different game types and different maps? And it's like, hey, man, it's what we grew up on. Mountain Dew,
Yep.
lunch meat, Blood Gulch. Get over it.
Oh, absolutely. Blood Gulch, man. That's a throwback, and I'm here for it.
Yeah. So, man, we are just killing the tangents tonight. But we'll jump back to Perfect Team. So you mentioned, and you actually walked through, which was I found really interesting, the hours logged for each game type. And so
Yep.
before Perfect Team was existed, then you're just playing out the base game and trying to find some way to keep your interest there. Now, what did you try? Were you taking over the Royals and trying to make them a super house or a powerhouse?
Yep.
Were you going fictional league? What were you doing?
No, I almost always start with the Royals. It's what do I say? That's what I enjoy is trying to build up a team that needs help. And in those years, they kind of always needed help. They had the great run in 14 and 15, and then 16 they were at least competent, and then they struggled again. So it was kind of cool to see how quickly you could get them back to that point. And even just on for this year's version. Is bringing up the big pitchers that we got in Singer, Koer, Lynch, Bubich, kind of running through that, and then trying to get Bobby Witt Jr. up as well, and see what he can do at the major league level. So I never got into the fictional league side. I never got into the online league stuff. A lot of it, I just didn't know how much time I'd have to commit to something like that.
Now, did you play with realistic financial constraints? We know that the Royals are not
Yeah.
known for their spending.
Oh yeah. Yep, I played realistic financial constraints and challenge mode and everything, so I tried to make it as tough as possible. And so then there'd be times where it took 6, 7 seasons before you were a competent team. But there's other times too. If you make some blockbuster trades early on, you could flip some players and make a run early on. One of the things that I think's undervalued on there is some of the ability to sign free agents and then flip them, sign them on 1-year deals and flip them for prospects at the trade deadline.
Right.
That game, the base game, highly rates productive players, and it does not rate as well prospects. And so you can get some pretty good prospects out of there. And you're a Cubs fan here. I'm gonna make sure I get this trade right. But at one point I flipped Kelvin Herrera along with a couple of people for Luis Robert from the White Sox, along with, and I'm drawing a blank now on a couple of their names, but that was probably my big trade where I made some moves and stole from the a divisional rival as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so that was always the second thing that I would do within out of the park base game. The first thing I would do was dominate with the Cubs, which
Yeah.
with their budget wasn't always the hardest thing. And then after that,
But
if I was still interested, then I would try to take over a budget team, whether it was the Royals or I think I would normally go with the Rays,
the Rays,
and then
Rays
just
are a good option.
try to play that player control game where you have to move on to players before they're off their rookie contract, and so how much winning can you do before that? And then the game will throw you curveballs. Like sometimes the out of the park engine will say, "Oh, the owners have voted, or the players union has negotiated that players will get to free agency after 5 years."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, your entire business model,
Yep.
your entire strategic model is blown up, and you have to find a way to sign your guys a year earlier, which is never a help. But jumping back to Perfect Team,
Absolutely.
you have been a very competitive team for the majority of the cycle. I remember the very first week, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the very first week of Perfect Team, you had 2 teams in there, right?
Yeah, I did. It was 20 teams, and I had 2 of them, which was kind of crazy.
And how did
one of
those 2
them-
teams do?
That's what I was going to pull up. I want to make sure I get my records right. My main team, funnily enough, I think they had 54 wins, 55 wins. It was not a good showing. And then my free-to-play, which was a lefty-only team, and I had carried forward the lefty cheese from PT20. I think they posted like 72 wins, which was not too shabby for a free-to-play team that was rocking some of the greats like Frank Tanana, and some of those names. I had championed the high stuff, low movement, high control, just praying for the best and hoping that the movement gods are nice to me on any given day. And for I think 3/4 of that season, Frank Tanana led Perfect League in ERA.
Oh
Or at
my
least was top
goodness.
3. And he's thrown against some of the at the time some of the great cards that are out there. And so you get this low diamond lefty with 60 movement that was out there. So I'd use
He
guys
did
like
have that high stuff though. Like Frank Tanana, I know was a like
yeah,
in case of emergency, I need a lefty opener to go 3 batters and cross my fingers. Like Tanana was
yep,
my guy until the
yep,
game had a bunch of new cards drop.
yep. No, he I think as a reliever he got to like 138 stuff somewhere around
Hmm.
there. And he was pretty solid. I used to use Ben Sheets, Burt Blyleven, kind of those guys that were that stuff lower on movement, high control guys, and kind of went that way. I had some early data stuff that I collected kind of showed that control was pretty valuable this iteration compared to the previous iteration.
Yeah, I find that interesting. So you developed a 1,000 hour understanding of Perfect Team 20, and then you
Yep.
come into Perfect Team 21. Now, I would imagine that the instinct would be just to take everything you learned from that last game and then roll it out. So walk me through the process of reconfirming those assertions formed and how difficult it was to shift when you would find data or find something that suggested that you should.
Well, so there's a couple points to that. So one thing that I learned was economy was the biggest thing, to get started with. And so I actually waited and delayed because I knew what they were doing and early on was they were essentially after that what I would say entry pool, they were going to partition teams out into different leagues. And I wanted to make sure that I stayed in what is it, Stone? I think that's the lowest, or Rookie.
Rookie, yeah.
Um, Rookie, that's the lowest. And so I actually waited until the week after they had partitioned all the teams. Like what was it? I think people had access on a Thursday, Wednesday, something like that. Made teams, and then entry pool was done. They were letting teams go, and so I actually created my team on what was it, that Monday after. At that point, so that way I could stay in Stone and then go to Rookie, and so I stayed that week behind everybody, where I could just generate 60,000 PP early on per week, running through those leagues. Um, and I spammed the crap out of tourneys. Um, I went for packs. A lot of people said go the money route, but I went for packs and tried to hit some cards early on. Then as far as data wise goes, I had actually worked with essentially a data group. It was some people that had recreated some of the Davies work from PT20. And those of you who know who Davey is, David put in a lot of effort into PT20, and a lot of analysis there, and which is an overall great guy. And then I'd met people out of that, and that's kind of where we created this database group, and we were kind of refining it, collecting data, going through the motions, trying to figure out how things worked out. But I just kind of took my general gameplay knowledge and then realized that things had shifted a little bit, if you will. I think the old formula was like the ratio is 1, 2.4, 1.5 roughly. So stuff, movement, and control. So movement being the most weighted out of all of it, and that kind of was not flipped on its head, but definitely changed dramatically as moved into this version or iteration of PT.
And so you mentioned that tournaments were a key component of your budding economy. What tournament variant did you focus in on?
So I had 3 teams. So I had my 2 free-to-play teams and my $100 team. The $100 team, I just ran golds. Tried to run as golds as much as possible, and I kind of cornered that early on, to where at one point I was earning like 24 to 30 packs a day doing golds. Um, and then my free-to-play lefty team, I was doing bronzes, and then my free-to-play righty team was doing irons. Just I didn't want to try and manage 3 different accounts spamming tourneys, so I just kind of I'll take my chances in irons and see what happens. Funnily enough, they up until recently they were the most successful tourney team in terms of big card wins. They actually won a Cupid Childs early on
Oh
out of
wow.
the Saturday Iron Wars, and I sold it to Bronx Bombers to Xenicus for 330,000. So that jump started that team.
Yeah, absolutely. So a free to play team catching a huge card like that and getting a gigantic jolt, which is the
Yeah.
equivalent of a couple hundred real dollars into the
Yep.
team is absolutely huge.
Yeah, and that was the hardest thing, honestly, for me in the BFF group that I was in, JDA, Quanta, or QUC, however you want to say it. And a lot of people would always ask me, how do I balance this? Because they kind of always ran their one teams and that's it. And everybody would ask, like JDA actually, I think on multiple occasions asked, which one's my favorite team? And I think it was literally a week to week determination, which was my favorite team, which one was I putting the effort in on. And then I hit, um, it was on the 100 Rogers Hornsby release night. I pulled a Hornsby on my main team, and at that point forward, they then were officially the main team. I
A
sold
million
them
perfect
for
points will do that, or whatever you sold
yep,
it for. Go ahead.
yep. I think I sold it for 875 or 880, somewhere around there, 850. To indicate I took a guaranteed sale. I had somebody else that said that they were willing to go. I threw it up for on Jerry's recommendation. I threw it up on I think it was a 1 hour open bid. I think I started at 1 million and nobody bid on it. So then I took the guaranteed sale before anybody else could pack one. Little did I know the second one actually sold for, I think it was 1.2 million.
Oh, wow.
So I cut myself out of 400,000, but I still cannot complain about making 800,000 off of a card. And that's the only time that I've ever had in terms of pack luck to be the first player to pull a card.
And so that night that you pulled it, what was your pack cash that you walked into? Were you sitting on 20 tournament packs, 100 tournament packs, one tournament pack? Like, do you remember
Yeah,
how big
so
of a chance you gave yourself?
that was actually the funny thing was I was never big on saving them for release nights. I was just like things weren't what do I say the content wasn't game changing enough to where people were paying astronomical values. But Chris had really hyped this one up, and so I sat on it and saved. And I saved I think it was 64 or 68 packs. Like I realized it was like a Tuesday, and I was like I need to save for this, and so I saved a couple of days worth of packs that I pulled and ran through that. And actually, I think Jerry was streaming his pack ripping that he was going through. That was one of his big pack rips where he's running through 2,000, 3,000 packs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the middle of it. And I just start blasting his chat up saying, "I just packed this," and he obviously he's going through 2,000 packs, and here I am. I'm a measly 60 or so. But he was. He was actually one of the first ones that kind of got me into the community side. He pulled me into a group with some pretty cool people. I'll shout out a couple of them, but it's API.
API is
You
not
got
that cool.
oh,
No,
oof.
I'm just kidding.
API. I tried, man. All right, I was trying to shout you out here, but Fabtron, Jazzy Jesus, everybody talks with him. But Jerry, Kidneys is in there. Bert, Buck Cheeks, as I call him, Cheeks. Shifted. I mean, there's a good group of people. Doc was in here for a while, as well. So we had a really good group of people early on that we could kind of BS around with. And it was cool to see how different people built their teams because I think for a while some people were really focused on speed. So it's kind of cool to see different performances from different teams. And I was just kind of sitting there wishing I had the cards that they had.
But you did have 875,000 perfect points, and you had your Topeka Defenders, and they had already been to perfect. And so, what did you do with that money, and how did you evolve your team with that windfall in a direction that could get you back on the perfect league stage?
Now I'm turning for timing, but I want to say, oh, man, now you're making me think here. I think that was right towards the end of the Team of the Decade stuff, if I recall. But so Team of the Decade is where I first started to speculate, but I didn't get into speculate until like the last two content sets. And then I ended up speculating a little bit, kind of going into face of the franchise. Not much. I had picked Royals first because I think we had all guessed that release that the what do I say the teaser that Chris had in chat. We'd all figured out who that was,
Right.
as far as Brett. And so I had spec'd them, but I didn't spec enough diamonds, unfortunately. And so I had to sell off all my golds and the diamonds that I had. And then I ended up kind of walking away at that point. I just had a lot of stuff come up in real life that I had to deal with, just job stuff, where I started traveling quite a bit more and walked away. I came back and I don't know, I just kind of fell back in love with the game, fell back in love with the grind, if you will. I mean, you know how it is. You can only grind the auction house for so long before it kind of it wears on you.
Yeah, hitting that refresh button and seeing if there's any silver Yankees at L7 That has a shelf life. You can only do
Yep.
that for a couple of months before you start asking yourself harder
What am I doing?
questions.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's an
Yeah.
understatement.
But whatever you did, and I guess it was after your hiatus where work pushed you away from the game for a bit, but you came
Yep.
back and you came back with a vengeance. And I recall calling one of your Perfect League World Series appearances. So you
Yep.
get back on the stage, you get to a World Series. Why don't you tell us what that was like?
That was so I got back perfectly. Let me see. What actually brought me back was somebody had pinged me to say my third team actually had made Perfect League. So at this point, I had all three teams, two free to play and one $100 team in Perfect League at one point throughout the year. And so I came back and just wanted to see how they did, and they got steamrolled.
Mm-hmm.
But then my main team made it. I think it was maybe the year after that. And that was back in essentially 2048 game time. And I I just kind of I was trying to figure things out, and we were still able to pseudo, and so I was pseudoing whenever I could, not as much as some, but I was just trying to get favorable matchups. And then the Perfect League, I think it was the World Series in 2052, I believe, was the one that you're talking about, and uh, I didn't walk my way through the playoffs by any means, but had a good run, and then met up with the Whale King in the World Series. And the play that I will not forget, I don't know the exact game, but I want to say it was Game 6.
Mm-hmm.
But my Willie Mays, face of the franchise, Willie Mays, who's a 131 in right field, fully trained up, drops a can of corn out in right field to lose the game. They end up scoring multiple runs that inning. It's an error, unearned runs galore, and we just never recovered from it. I mean, that was where it was rough. And then the next week, I think it's the Puma, as it's called, came for me. I think I only won 82 games or something that following week. 80 to 82 games. And then I was down to Diamond, man, and I could not get back out of Diamond for a long time. I was 112 wins, 110, 111, 112, and I just could not make it back up. And then
Preach
I
to
had
the
this
choir, brother.
and then I had this short stint the last couple weeks. And actually last week I thought I had my playoff spot on lock, and I was out of town over the weekend. And I come back, and with like 3 games to go, the team that's behind me in my division was on a win 15, and
Whew,
I
that's a
lost.
heater.
Yeah, it is, man. And I lost my perfect league playoff berth, and I lost on run differential to stay up because I think last week was the week where they had one extra team stayed up
Yep. The
as far as it
mild
goes.
card.
So yep. So now I'm back in Diamond and just trying to figure out how to make it back to the big boys.
How invested are you still in this game cycle?
Uh, so in Perfect League, I would check in way more frequently. What I did, like I checked in, today. I checked, and actually I realized I still had 7-day lineup set on, so I just went in, turned all that off, and I can AFK Diamond to 110 wins and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll check in on a Sunday. There's no collections that I need to do. So whenever I came back in Perfect League, I chained through a lot of collections. I now have 7 collections to knock out to have all my collections done technically, which the rest of them are just not positive EV. Um, so I just don't have much reason to check in at this point. If I get back to Perfect League, I'll check in more frequently, and try and get some favorable matchups. But I'm really just kind of looking forward to see what PT22 has to offer. I've talked with a few people, so hoping the hype that I'm hearing from them is good. That it's
What's
true.
what's one thing that you would just absolutely love to see them have in PT22 that would bring your excitement all the way back up to 11?
Yeah, good question. Honestly, they need a progression system, and I don't think it'll happen for PT22, but there's what 226, 227 100s, and I think there's got to be some kind of progression system to make it worthwhile. Maybe on day one, some of the elite teams, some people who put in a lot of money or a lot of time are using high end golds and low diamonds. Maybe that 90 Ty Cobb is the best card in the game at that point,
Right.
and having some kind of progression system where then in 2 months a 93 Ty Cobb comes out and he's just marginally better, kind of like that jump from a 96 to 99 cap.
Mm-hmm.
Would be, or 100 Hornsby to the face of the franchise Hornsby, or 100 Maze to face of the franchise Maze, where you just kind of that slow progression there. because people will pay for that progression, and that would get them enticed and to give me the desire to come back to where, because the worst thing you can do is you can open a pack and get even a historical 100 that is just 28,000. Like it's just right above quick sell, and that takes the fun out of it for a lot of people. I don't rip too many packs. I just do tournament packs, but I have a lot of friends who rip a lot of packs. Um, and it's just rough to see. I mean, you go through stretches where you just don't have anything of value. And it's not because of the market. I mean, it's just those 100s just aren't. I mean, right now a historical diamond is in most cases more valuable than a lot of the historical diamonds that you pull.
Yeah, that's a great point you make. And I was recently having a conversation where I was advocating that there not be live perfect cards for just this reason. You pull a perfect card every 1,000 packs or whatever the
Yep.
math is, and when you pull one and it's another Shane Bieber or it's another Juan Soto or whatever live perfect you want to cite here, it just kills you. And I think
Yep.
it's basically the effect that you're talking about there, where at this stage in the game, those perfects that were there on day one, those historical perfects, very, very, very few of them would have any relevance to you other than their ability to serve as a face of the franchise collection piece, or if you're lucky,
Yep.
some other collection piece as well. So your recommendation would be to not start the game with any perfects. Start the game with a 90.
No, I mean, I would start with a couple. I think there's got to be a couple. So like Triss carried it forward, and he still produces at a very high level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got to have a couple because what it does is it incentivizes people to rip for that card, right?
Right.
From a business side, you've got to have some side to do it. What I think you got to have is more, what do I say, competitive strategy planned out for that, and not just like a content development idea. There's two schools of thought there, and I think you got to, in my mind, you got to go to making some kind of progression for the system, whether that's running through a 90 to a 93 to a 96 to 97 to 99 or whatever it may be, some kind of progression that offers that. If there's a 98 that's already out and we release a 94, that's not that doesn't help a whole lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if he's an 89 and he's an incredible 89, that maybe changes up the gold tournaments meta, right? That's different than just dropping another 94, whatever it may be. I don't know. Like I said, that's probably the one thing that I would like to see. Keep people engaged too, and then also, at the end of the year, you're pulling that. One thing you noted on the live cards though is interesting. Is I was actually just discussing this in a one of my group chats that I'm in, and I had asked the question of how many lives today would get a historical 100.
0.
Mike Trout.
Yeah, Mike Trout, I'll give you that.
Mookie may get a 100. Maybe if he continues on the path that he's going.
Give Acuna another decade of production. We could
Yeah,
be in 100 territory there.
And also, man, Acuna, that one hurts because he was supposed to be a Royal. We just barely missed out on him on that deal.
Oh shoot, I didn't know the backstory there.
Yeah, he was nearly a Royal, and that one hurts. I think the Braves offered, I think it was an extra 10 grand or something like that over him, over what the Royals had, or maybe it was another 30 grand, and he signed with the Braves. But no, I mean, lives. You look at a live today. So like I'm a Royals fan. Let's say take that. You look at like a 2014, 2015 Wade Davis season where he had a sub 1 ERA, sub 1 FIP, and he comes in at an 89, I think is what his gold is, or an 88, somewhere around there. And this dude had a sub 1 FIP, sub 1 ERA, just absolutely dominant. I think he allowed 2 extra base hits all year. And he comes in and as a gold. And yet we have live people that are nowhere near the 100s that they should be, or nowhere near the diamonds that they should be.
Right.
So I think that's. I think I like your idea. Just now key it in with progression, and then key it in with some of what the other people that you've had on the stream that have talked about. I mean, we've got a lot of good ideas in the community, and that's one thing that I really like about them is that they do take that into account. This is a small enough group that there's enough people that speak up about things, and that they really listen to us as much as they can, while bearing in mind the bigger, broader game as far as that goes.
So you've offered up the piece of feedback there, suggestion with regards to the chaining of the cards in terms of progression. Now, what's one thing that you really hope does not happen? What's one thing that you think they could do in PT22 that would be a mistake?
Significant number of microtransactions, and I'm a little biased here probably because I'm free to play. You know, I can put money into the game and I can. I don't want to. I usually put my $100 in on day one or thereabouts, maybe day seven, and then go from there. And if they do microtransactions where you start bringing in a lot of that type of stuff, that's gonna, what do I say, deter from the value that a free to play or a low end team can have and can compete at the highest level. Because I think there's a difference in just starting out as free to play and competing versus playing free to play like a QC or JDA or myself or you in that matter. So those players that are $100 or less, where they're essentially a free to play team, but there's some dollars that are spent that are competitive. That we just put in a lot of time. I mean, my time into this one and the last one shows that it's not just a money thing, but you can also win it by time by flipping those life silvers, and
Absolutely.
churning it through that way. So microtransactions would probably be the one thing I'd really dread.
Now, for anyone unfamiliar with microtransactions or familiar with it in other games, but having a hard time imagining how that could potentially come into play with Perfect Team, what would be an example of a way that you could see a microtransaction deployed in our Perfect Team?
Um, what do I want to say? Like almost like power up or boosts for any given game or maybe a week. Um, you know, pay 99 cents or a dollar or something like that, and X player gets a 3 point stat boost across the board or 5 point stat boost
Hmm.
across the board for this. So essentially, he's on a hot streak, if you will.
Right.
And I'm using air quotes for that. You could also look at, um, paying to reduce down reserves. So people who like the reserve timer, 14 days, 14 games, you could look at reducing it that way. So then it allows people to flip through rosters more frequently, so they can run on fewer pitchers. I guess
Right.
those type of things. You don't have to have the API levels of 57 reserve pitchers or anything on that end.
I mean, shoot, you give API that lever, then he's going to be pitching Greg Maddux every single day of the week, whether it's face of the franchise, legend, 99, 97. I mean, shoot, maybe Chris will release a 92 Maddux for him to play with.
Exactly. No, I think that would be the one thing that I think would kind of throw me off. But I also understand it from a business side. You've got to do what makes money as well. But I think there's other ways that you can go with that route. I would really like to see competitive side kind of showcase, and I think they've done a great job with One Perfect League, because we had One Perfect League like as a whale invitational, if you will, back in PT20, and then I don't know if that was the actual design for this, but that's what it turned into, and it's been great. I mean, I really like the One Perfect League idea, and it made it much more competitive. I think tournaments are improving, so they're going in the right direction in a lot of ways. They just need to, I think, fine tune some of the progression side and not throw in micros.
Yeah, I can't even imagine a game with more than one perfect league. Obviously, I didn't spend any time in PT20, but having that one league that sits at the top that is very difficult to A, enter,
Yep.
B, stay in, and then C, God forbid, one day find yourself taking down a trophy. Like, I love that design and I love that mechanic so much.
Yep, absolutely. I think it was a great idea. I'm not sure whoever came up with it, but kudos to them for it. It's enticing. Like I said, that's what brought me back at one point. Was one of my third team, my alt team, made it there, and someone pinged me, or I think a couple people pinged me and said, "Hey, you're back in Perfect League," and so it brought me back.
So you've got your alt teams. Is it 3 total teams that you play with?
Yep, 3 total.
So your $100 team, 2 free to play teams, and then with your alts, you've actually affiliated with some sub communities, correct?
Correct. Yep. I'm in the Our League, which is a forum group on the OOTP forums, and essentially the way that they play it is more or less no live cards and no kind of versions of live cards like all-star cards. I think player of the months are banned from that as well, but
Hmm.
essentially everything else is kind of free game. um and then also the team of the year stuff I think is in there as well. um but it's then they play, essentially you compete against everybody else, like, so they'll go through and actually check schedules to see how many times you playing against people within our league. So like it doesn't go off your total record, but it actually just goes off your, I'm going to call it a conference record, if you will, like your record against other our league competitors, and then they'll take your logo and add a crown to it at the end of the week to say who won. what levels. I think they've got levels all the way up, or at least they got levels throughout there. Silver, gold, diamond. They've had a few OL representatives in Perfect League as well, so it's kind of cool to see some of the free to play compete at those levels.
And one of those representatives being you, right? Because that team, all three of your
Yeah.
teams have made it to Perfect. So your OL team has made it.
Yep, both OL teams have made it. And then I think it was Norwood Diamonders actually made it just a little bit ago. Was that last week or maybe 2 weeks ago? And they actually had a really good showing. So it's good to see those and show that we can compete if we put in the time, I guess. And you got to have pack luck.
Time and pack luck, and I think that's the one big takeaway for me that I've seen this game cycle is that if you're not willing to reach to that credit card for a significant amount of money, then you just have to be willing to do things like grind the auction house for silvers,
Yep.
or do things like tune a tournament roster 25 times to get it to the point where it's generating consistent packs for you, and then retune it once the meta shifts a bit and you need to re-optimize it. That time is really that commodity that determines the overall success when you're not a big budget player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and I had to a lot of good back and forth with the bronze stuff early on as well. Kind of trying to figure out who do we go with at what position. What do you have for your war over 600 and stuff like that. Trying to figure things out. So, data collection and then time.
Honestly, that's one of the things that's most exciting to me as I look to PT22 is having an entirely new meta. That, like, from a bronze perspective, and yes, we did have that big dump of cards within the past 8 weeks or so, which has certainly impacted it. But there's nothing like starting from a completely blank slate of data collection and looking at all the cards. And earlier in the game, the teams were all wildly different. Like, no two bronze rosters were the same until people started figuring out what the best bronze rosters were and copying the teams that were winning frequently. So that was a really fun time of the game. That was when, obviously, there's way more opportunity to juice your packs acquired or your perfect points acquired via tournaments. And at this stage in the game, when you have some idiot loudmouth running a stream about the best bronze cards, and then all of the meta gets super narrowed to the point where it's way harder. And I'm guessing that a big part of it too is just that the people that are still spamming tournaments are the dedicated players, and gone are the casual players who aren't really putting any thought at all into their bronze build. So that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to next year.
Yeah, there's actually one other point that I had to add to that too is a lot of people move over to cap tournaments because you can still find your niches where you have a highly optimized cap team. As opposed to just having full stack of rosters, everybody copies everybody. The gold caps or even some of the diamond caps, I know we're running, or open caps as well. Those are always good options too.
So we're just crossing the hour mark now. I really appreciate the time that you've given and the candor that you've shown tonight. 2 questions left for you. First, what are you going to do differently in PT22? Or just generically, what is going to be your strategy? Are you going to do something similar where you are sitting out that initial wave for perfect point accumulation purposes? Or do you have a different plan in mind?
Honestly, it kind of really depends on what PT22 looks like, what the game looks like. If they do it the same way, and also it depends on my time commitment. I recently changed jobs, and so my hours are going to be a little bit different. So I'll have to see here in a couple months what kind of time I can put towards it. And I'm also contemplating just running one team as my main team, and then maybe making a theme team for the Missouri, just pulling all the Missouri players that I can, and taking it easy this year.
Perfect. Last question for you. Now, I know that you've had some history and interaction with my Thursday co-host, Your Kidneys. And so once and for all, did he do it all for the glory?
Of course he did. That's Kidneys in a nutshell, right? No, Kidneys is a great guy.
Well, Maxfire, Daniel, I appreciate all the time tonight. Appreciate all of your answers, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to watching your team continue to battle out through the rest of this game cycle. I wish you good luck with that, and then I'm sure we'll be in conversations into PT22 as we're both trying to figure out how to get our teams back to where they are now.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to moving into the next iteration of PT.
Maxfire 5, everyone.
Thanks.
Whoa, look at that. Welcome back with a vengeance. You're having to deal with me in triplicate. Let's quickly fix that. There we go. That was actually quadruple DRC. More DRC than you can handle. Wow. So that was Maxfire 5. I really enjoyed it. You know, we definitely took advantage of some tangents there. He got me talking about Mitch Trubisky. We talked about gaming and how we each had our own different path. Mine was Halo 1 LAN parties. He had his own flavor. But I think so many of us in this community, you know, we've got those stories. We've got those games, those formative games that turned us into the video game avid players that we are today. And a lot of the muscle memory created to do things like compete on the Perfect League stage were formed by competing in other games. And I find it really interesting to learn what those games were for other people. I just opened up the giveaway for you guys, as we are going to give away 30,000 perfect points. The way to get into the giveaway is to type !ticket. Now, if you do win the giveaway, you'll need to message me on Discord with your Out of the Park username with the correct capitalization, and then we'll get you those perfect points by morning. We've got 28 people, 30 people, so we've got people rocking in there. I want to thank Maxfire. I thought some interesting insights in there about about his perfect team journey, about how real life got in the way at times. He had to pull away, but actually one of his alts having some success pulled him back in, which then allowed his main to come back to the fore and then get him all the way to the Perfect Team World Series. And only a very unfortunate defensive replacement error in Game 6 at a most inopportune time separated him from a potential Perfect Team Championship, Perfect Team World Series. I thought it was also interesting hearing him talk about the game economy. For the budget player, for the economy-driven player, there are things you need to do to be able to compete at the highest level. Auction house, collection sequencing, tournaments. You've got to be good at least at 2 of those 3, if not all 3, if you want to be able to compete at the highest level without much investment, and Maxfire did. All right, we'll go ahead and close the giveaway. First winner for the giveaway tonight is Doom6135. Second winner is JPack14. And third and finally is our Florida Marlins buddy, JRonk9. So congrats to our winners. Again, if you are a winner, message me on Discord with your Perfect Team username with the correct capitalization, and then we will get you those perfect points by morning. I like that the chat is now claiming that every giveaway we ever do is rigged. And I don't know, maybe they're right. So congrats to our winners. Look at the emote that J-Ronk's using there. Is that the new PogChamp? I was PogChamping last night and it looked different. So I wonder if they replaced PogChamp today with this new one. All right, so who are we going to have next week? So episode 16 will be a special one for me because I'm going to have someone on that might just be the most interesting man in Perfect Team. I don't know a ton about him, but what little I do know from his repairing of old vehicles an old Mustang to his Christmas lights, which syncs with music. Everything I know about him is interesting. Oh shoot, I should call out his setup for his computer. Multi-monitor setup that would make any computer aficionado blush, excuse me. And that guest is going to be Chuck. Chuck8403. He's been an incredible supporter of this channel. He has been an incredible competitor in the Perfect League world. I think that Chuck has like something ridiculous, like 6 or 7 or 8 Diamond League championships. So he has spent a ton of time winning Diamond Leagues and competing within Perfect League. And this next week, we're going to get to learn a whole lot more about him. One monitor to rule them all, as Walnut says. It's Chuck time, and I can't wait for that one. So if you have questions that you want me to ask Chuck, let me know. Put it in the Discord. And the Discord to put it into is that one right there. Also, at the very beginning of this show, we opened up nominations for our Community Choice Awards. And so if that's something foreign that you've never heard of before, we are going to hold a Community Choice Award show late February where we try to have some fun and recognize some community members for a number of different awards. We picked out 12 of them, and there's also a catch-all where if there's anyone that you just want to recognize and bring to the fore, we welcome that. And I'll hot link to that right now. Boom. So you can submit your nominees for the first annual PT Community Choice Award at that link there. Put in the username of the person you want to nominate for the given award. I already saw that there was something like 15 or 20 submissions already, so it's great to see. Once we are done gathering nominations and figuring out who our key competitors are for each award, we'll send out a more formalized survey from which the basis of the award selection will come. DLL, do you like losing? That's true in my case. That's what I do in DLL. So I clearly like it, or else I'd go somewhere else. Although I'm DLL disbanded this week for the purposes of spreading around the ladder, and I'm not doing any better. So what can you do? All right, so that is going to do it for me tonight. Now, do remember Thursday, Kidneys and I do our normal show. Chris drops the one very last content set upon us, and we will break it down. How strong is it? How strong are the cards? How badly do you need to reach into your perfect point balance to uproot those cards from the packs that they're going to be living within? And then after that is done, won't have another show on Thursday until the Community Choice Awards. So we'll take a little break. It's the end of the This Weekend Perfect Team season, if you will. And then we'll cap it in between that hiatus period with the Community Choice Awards show. Should be a lot of fun. But with that being said, thank everyone for watching tonight. Thanks for all the support. Let's call out Chuck as he gifted out subscriptions to people within the chat. We got Walnut, API, and Chuck throwing in some bits into the chat as well. So thank everyone for the support, and we will see you on Thursday.